Hello and welcome to another festive episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today is the man whose favorite Christmas tradition is the elf on the shelf.
That's
Ken
fake news.
Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello, that's fake news.
I just had to include that because I don't know when the whole elf on the shelf thing started, but I hate it so much.
I don't know when it started, but I want to know when it ends.
I think it's a pretty recent thing, right?
When there's still time to stop it.
Oh, man. If you tuned into last year's holiday episode, you'll remember we spoke about made-for-TV Christmas movies, and there were so many of them, we decided to do it again this year, so throw on another Yule log because this is Saved by the 90s.
Why did Mom give you the silver? I was supposed to get the silver.
Where were you when Mom was sick? Oh, that's right.
You were in Florida with that
Don't
guy.
talk to my wife that way.
Sorry,
Anyway, I want to.
Excuse me.
You know, you're not even
I've got to say, I think I want to be a Democrat.
Okay, time out. Fangs and claws away. Peace on earth, goodwill to each other. Where's the love? You can't stop, Grandma. You can't.
PlayStation.
What was that?
I don't know if you heard him, but he goes, I think I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, I was about to say, what was that? And then he said that, and I'm like, I really don't know what this is now. And then it turns out to be an ad for PlayStation.
Yeah, it was one of those classic 90s tude-filled PlayStation commercials. All the video game commercials back then.
Apparently, the way that Tude was expressed was very different than I thought it was. I'm sorry, that's just haunting me now. Like, so it starts with our family argument, and then it becomes unintelligible, and then he says he wants to be a Democrat, and then
So let me like paint a visual for you.
okay.
So it is a family arguing. They start off by saying some really awful things, and then they start to all argue. The one guy says he's a Democrat, and a guy dressed up as Crash Bandicoot like kind of breaks in the door, and then you have other PlayStation characters coming in with him. That's when Crash says his whole thing, and then they show Grandma playing PlayStation.
Is that what Republicans think that liberals want for America?
I really don't know.
They want They think that liberals want Crash Bandicoot to come breaking through the doors of every Republican family household.
No idea what was going on there.
After combing through dozens more holiday TV movies, we scrounged up 4 more choice titles to discuss this year, the first of which involves a girl whose only Christmas wish is to get a new mom. Airing on NBC on December 17th, 1990, this is A Mom for Christmas.
It's a Christmas wish for the mom she never had.
That's what I want.
You want a mom for the holidays.
Now, with a little magic, a miracle is coming to life.
Hi. I'm going to love this.
But when the magic spell is over,
Midnight.
can one little girl's love keep the magic alive?
Till Christmas, never forget.
Olivia Newton-John's first TV movie, A Mom for Christmas, on NBC, Monday.
Oh my. What? All right.
We have so much to talk about with this.
Oh yeah.
With every movie we're about to talk about.
Every one of them. A Mom for Christmas revolves around 11-year-old Jessica, whose mother died when she was 3 years old. Her father, Jim, is a workaholic with little time for his daughter. Just before the Christmas holiday season, Jessica wins a free wish from a wishing well. Her wish for a mother for Christmas is granted by Philomena, and Amy, a department store mannequin, is brought to life to be a mom for Jessica. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Ken, just why don't you kick it off?
So,
What's
as
going
we
on?
begin what is probably going to be the longest episode we've ever done, longer than the one where we talked about 10 movies.
Yeah.
So, there is at once nothing and everything going on in this movie. Like, I couldn't discern a single plot point, but at the same time, just the idea that a mannequin comes to life and becomes your new mother is so just like quietly bonkers. And the
It's-
movie, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's like Mannequin 2 on the move, crossed with Night at the Museum. And there's this really weird like love story in there too.
A recurring theme we're about to go deep into in discussing this is movies about families written by someone who does not appear to understand human dynamics at all.
We will get to that big time later on in the show, but every one of these movies involves some sort of broken family that is brought together with a new love. Like every one of them, there's a lot of common themes in these movies, and they're all very poorly done. So this one, like the synopsis, you have this kid. Apparently, all these kids do is hang out in this department store. Now, when I was a kid, I hated going to the department store with my parents. Like I wanted to get out of there as soon as I went in. Like I couldn't stand going to department stores.
I used to not like department stores until I saw Carol, and then I realized that any place depicted in Carol carries a substantial emotional significance.
There's certain, like when I go to Macy's and stuff, there's a certain amount of I don't know if it's nostalgia or just this kind of this like classic Americana sort of washes over me when I
gotta
go
love how all out a department store goes at Christmas.
Yeah,
that's all I can offer.
Yeah. Anyway, these kids just love hanging out. They're just in the department store all the time. So this kid is hanging out in the department store. She gets made fun of not because she doesn't have a mom, but just because she's weird. I guess they say that she's weird,
and they don't like. Not that we give much credence to what, I don't know, grade school aged bullies say in movies, but the characters don't make sense. Like the backstory of the character does not make any sense. It's never quite understood what the story of these people are, except that there is a certain emptiness in the family that is felt especially in the holidays, and can only be addressed by the human incarnation of the department store mannequin.
So she meets this. So she does get a wish, and in the wish, or she gets a present, and in the box it just says you get a free wish, and she meets Philomena, who is played by Doris Roberts. And first of all, she wishes for a mom for Christmas, specifically for Christmas. She doesn't wish for a new mom. She just wishes for a mom for Christmas, and she gets a necklace from that.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about how the title "A Mom for Christmas" sounds like a misread line from a speech that Dan Quayle probably gave in 1990?
It's amazing. It truly is. I mean, as soon as when we were looking through all the hundreds of movies and we saw A Mom for Christmas, I was like, well, that has to go on the list.
Because it really does seem like
simply must.
The epitome of a movie that wants to be about some kind of family dynamic, but has absolutely no idea how to write that in a meaningful or emotionally resonant way, to the point where it has to outsource its emotion to a character where there's a sub journey for the character to try and learn what it means to be a human for the very first time, basically.
Yeah, but it's not done very well, because she's trying to be, she's a human for the first time. So to back up a little bit, she ends up going home. The girl goes home, and all of a sudden at midnight, Olivia Newton-John shows up at her house, and it turns out that she's a mannequin and she was brought to life. What we don't know at that time is that apparently all the mannequins just come to life whenever they want. It's not even like a Night at the Museum thing. They can just come alive whenever. It doesn't have to be a specific
Toy Story,
time.
honestly.
Yeah, it's more like Toy Story, I would say. So she gets a mom, and right away she knows that it's like that. This is it. Like the wish came true. There was no question about it. She just immediately was on board with it. And the dad, who is a complete buffoon in this. Like, I don't understand. Like, none of the dialogue is particularly good in this. Like, everything is pretty poorly written, but the dad is so bad in this. Like, every line, it's not specifically his performance, but just all of his dialogue is so utterly atrocious
He
on
somehow feels
every level.
it's a character that somehow feels less comfortable about being a human than the Olivia Newton-John character, who has literally not been in a human environment and lived among humans ever.
Yeah. I also forgot that when she gets the wish from Philomena, she kisses her, and I thought that was really odd. Like, when would a kid ever just like kiss a strange woman working at a department store? Like, even if they shared a moment, I'm not buying that. I don't think that would happen.
Well, once again, we return to the fact that a recurring element through this entire episode will be humans written in ways that no human has ever acted before. And one thing you begin to realize as the film goes on is that we realize that we find all the different ways that these characters do not know how to be human because the film doesn't really have a perspective that it can grab onto. Like, there's an arguably better version of this movie, which is more exclusively from the perspective of the Olivia Newton-John character trying to navigate her way into this family and sort of learning what it means to be like a component of a human relationship and have human emotions during that process. But like, that's a journey. That's a journey you can grab on, you can sort of grasp on a palpable level and understand, and sort of that perspective is your guidance into this movie. The problem here is that it just kind of like the film kind of just wildly bounces between all three of these characters and never lands anywhere.
There's no consistency with what she knows, what she doesn't know. There's some like obvious human things that she just isn't aware of, and then there's some things where it's like, I mean, they try to explain it away by saying that she like reads books and that's how she learns how to become a human, but even that doesn't really make much sense. What also doesn't make any sense is the fact that she shows up at midnight, she lets herself in, the dad is no idea, he has no idea what's going on here, and then she says, "Oh, I'm here about the nanny job." And he's just like, okay, you can stay in our spare room in the garage or something." And then she's like, "Okay, well, I'm getting a job at the department store." And it's like, why does she need the job at the department store if this guy just hired her to be a live-in nanny? Like, why does she need two jobs? I understand that that she needed to pay off the clothes that she took and stuff from the department store, but it seems like this whole like second job at the department store was just a reason to get her back into the store to push forward that whole subplot with the security guard, the mall, the department store security guard, like investigating them, which that whole subplot goes nowhere and was completely unnecessary. Like,
Takes up a whole lot of time, and
oh
like
my
especially
oh my god. And like, what department store employee would notice or give a crap about this? Like, he first starts investigating her when he notices that her boots are the same boots that they sell there. Like, are you kidding? Why would he give a flying flip, you know, what this lady was doing, unless he actually saw her stealing?
they have a is this movie set in a universe where like there's a police state that extends to department stores? Like you're just under this constant surveillance all the time, which is both somehow how there's enough cataloged information about human behavior that the Olivia Newton-John character can just read a book and learn everything about human behavior except emotional availability, and there are security guards sufficiently overzealous to spend substantial amounts of time trying to crack this non-existent case.
I think that's a trope. It's one that we'll come back to with a movie later on in this episode, where you have the security guard who is like, didn't make it into the police force, so he's like this overzealous mall cop, basically. That's such a such a movie trope right there. It's ridiculous. So of course you have Olivia Newton-John, who is learning to be a mom to the girl, but there's also this half-baked love story where you have the dad, Jim, played by Doug Sheehan, that is forming, I guess. Like the other movies that we'll discuss, this whole love story thing happens very suddenly and moves at lightning speed.
It's the passage of time in this movie is never clear, to put it mildly.
So she only has until the day after Christmas, and then she has to go away. She has to go back and become a mannequin again, I guess. But again, it sort of breaks its own rules, because as we see numerous times throughout the movie, that these mannequins can just become human whenever they want. So I don't even see what the big deal is here, because like the driver mannequin, he just whenever it's convenient, just becomes. And I love how there's one mannequin that apparently is just positioned at the loading dock to open the door at, at certain times. Like,
It
what's that
feels
guy
like
doing
there's
there?
so much information missing here in a movie that already has no sense of pace.
And you have the Santa Claus mannequin, who is, I'm not sure. I don't why is the Santa Claus mannequin so creepy? He's like some British serial killer. they made him so disturbing. In fact, all the lighting in this movie, it's lit like a horror movie.
It
This
really is.
This whole movie's lit like a horror movie. There's a scene when they Santa is helping them, and he gets hit by a car, and he gets hit. Santa gets hit by a car and dismembered.
And it like explodes.
And then Olivia Newton-John uses her magic to. So this happens to occur in front of a house that has this crazy elaborate Christmas scene in the front yard, where it's got like all of these elves and other figures just littered, and she turns them all into humans, and then they do this like ritual and resurrect the mannequin Santa. It's it's something else. It really is something else. And then of course there's some conflict that happens, because she doesn't know all the details about being a mom. Like she read stuff in her books, but she's still a mannequin, so she doesn't really know how to be a mom. So she's like reading her diary, and she gets in trouble for that. And then they try to give the dad a good Christmas by buying a tree, and rather than lighting it with Christmas tree lights, they put candles all over the tree, and of course it catches on fire, because why wouldn't it? And it burns down their living room.
There's just this movie has such a strange floating relationship with the physical world. Like in one moment it's about using magic to bring a dismembered mannequin Santa back together. But then in other moments, it's about how, you put up a Christmas tree near candles and your whole house is gonna like catch fire.
Oh my god. The conflicts, the multiple conflicts that just pop up, and you feel like they're going to be a big deal because they make it out to be a big deal, but it turns out to be nothing. Like when she read her diary, and she got so mad at her, and she at one point she wished to undo the original wish, but then like 2 minutes later she tried to she immediately backtracked and was like, no, I didn't mean that. So it's like, why is all this in here? What is going on in this movie?
Yeah, it's when it's not completely astounding, it is just overwhelmingly. It's almost dull in how much dulling in how much information it throws at you.
I loved it when Jim and Amy, when they finally like decided that they love each other, and I think it was Jim who just goes, this is confusing, and Olivia Newton-John goes, it's also the simplest thing in the world.
What's
And it-
the simplest thing in the world?
And also the Amy, don't run away from this. Amy, please.
Everyone's either just sort of there or dialed up to a 30.
And then okay, so at the very end, she goes back to the department store. She does turn back into a mannequin, but then Jessica, or no, sorry, yeah, Jessica's her name, right? She holds the mannequin's hand and tells her dad, who shows up, to also hold on to the mannequin, and he grabs I don't know if you saw, he grabs the mannequin's butt, which I thought was kind of funny.
Mhm.
And of course their love for Amy brings her back to life, but not how you would think. The mannequin doesn't turn back into a human. No. Olivia Newton-John like materializes from thin air as a separate person. So there's still the mannequin there, but then also Amy is, I guess, turned into a human, like a permanent human. But it's like the slowest materializing scene I've ever seen in a movie, maybe. I think it was the slowest materialization ever shot on film. And she's wearing some kind of like pirate outfit when it looks like a puffy shirt, like the puffy shirt episode of Seinfeld.
There's so many choices here. You just have to sit back after a while and think, that was a choice. You can't understand it. You can't try to understand it. They're just choices. And life is all about choices. And making films is presumably all about choices.
Yeah,
Such choices as running over Santa.
Dismembering Santa.
Yes.
And then holding some kind of weird ritualistic seance to bring him back.
Like, this movie takes so much time on some things and so little time on other things. And eventually it's so disorienting, you don't know how much time has passed in the movie. Like, you feel the minutes in different ways. You feel older when it's over because you've been through so much. So much has happened. There's been fires. There's been materializing. There's been a weirdly obsessive detective subplot. There's been a ritual to bring back Santa. You feel like you've been through it. You feel like you've aged. It's like The Irishman.
And then you have that amazing Olivia Newton-John soundtrack.
Oh, of course, yes.
To go with it.
That as well.
Because, man, none of it fits. None of it feels like it should be there at all.
Such a song that was clearly written in like 10 minutes just to make sure that there was an Olivia Newton-John song to go with this movie.
It is.
And again, if we think back to Grease, Hopelessly Devoted to You was also a contractually obligated song that the songwriters did not want to write and wrote very hastily. And that turned out pretty well. So, What's the deal with this?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on in this movie. It's very, very strange, to say the least. I will say that all of the movies that we're discussing on this episode are horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're all really amazingly horrible. And
I recommend almost all of them.
They're all bizarre in their own special way, and I had a blast going through all of them. But
this is the real value of talking about TV movies, is that they're allowed to be as insane as they want, essentially, and that's why we need more network space given to TV movies, because we don't really have any anymore. And look what we're missing.
Yeah, we're missing A Mom for Christmas. Are you kidding me? This was on NBC?
Yeah. Imagine just turning on NBC and seeing Santa get run over.
It is something else. Oddly, it's not the most bizarre title that we'll be discussing.
Not really, no.
Next up, we have a classic story of a wealthy business owner having one of his underlings pretend to be his family in order to close a big deal. But guess what? They actually fall in love. Airing on CBS on November 30th, 1997, and becoming one of its highest viewed TV movies. This is Borrowed Hearts.
Good morning.
Hey,
So how'd the house hunting go?
check it out. Zoe doesn't know yet. Don't want to get her hopes up.
Over this? Well, who's your realtor, Cat? Herman Munster?
Well, at least it's a better neighborhood, and it'll be a better school for Zoe.
You know, you might improve the picture. You put a man in there.
Yeah, that's all I need right now. You know, if it has tires or testosterone, it's trouble.
Hey, you got that right. What the credit union say about a down payment?
About 10,000.
What?
I guess I'll just have to moonlight for a while.
Single mom Kathleen Russell and her daughter Zoe pretend to be Kathleen's boss's family so he can close a major business deal with the mysterious Mexican financier Javier del Campo. Adam, let's start off with your thoughts on this other bizarre and at times upsetting movie.
Oh boy. So this one stars Roma Downey and Eric McCormick. Eric McCormick is the business owner. And when he's introduced, the other coworker who I think who we heard in that clip, she goes, "The man goes through more women than a manicure." And that line happens at probably the first scene of the movie. And I'm sitting there like, what does that even mean? The man goes through more women than a manicure? Like, I understand maybe what she was going for there, but it's not worded correctly at all. So I feel like that was a great setup for what this movie is gonna offer us.
There's a lot of mixed signals coming from this movie.
And then you have, what was it? I think it was his business partner who played by Sean Thompson, who in maybe like one or two scenes later says that women are a bucket of dirty water. And I'm just
Wild.
like what?
That was wild.
Women are a bucket of dirty water. Oh my god. So
Wild.
again, this is it's pretty atrocious. You heard the setup. You have Roma Downey is a single mom. She is looking to buy a house for her and her daughter. And as it happens, for some reason, so they're driving, and she ends up at her boss's house, and her bratty daughter just goes into the house. Just goes into this guy's house.
Because it looked like her dollhouse.
Yeah, because it looked like the dollhouse that she had. So she just enters this man's house. And as it happens, they were trying to find a family that they could rent because this businessman.
I want to track the like. There's a weird that like sometimes you could do pretty cohesive political readings of movies. This movie touches upon every possible ideology. So first off, obviously, the daughter just going into the house. There's no private property. That's clearly that. But there's no private property. This movie first feels very anti-private property. I'm like, wow, that's kind of a radical idea. And then it becomes about how they need to impress this quirky Mexican businessman and then pretend to be a family because that's some sort of structure he values highly. So I'm not exactly sure what that is, but in terms of weird stereotyping and emphasis on family values, then it becomes very conservative, and we're just in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, so the daughter goes into the house, and they show that she's like wearing her boots that have snow all over them, and it features maybe the fakest snow I've ever seen in my entire life. When they pan down to her boots, it is utterly ridiculous. And then they agree to be this guy's family. And I mean, of course, it's all telegraphed from the very beginning. Of course, that they're going to fall in love and be a real family at some point. So they learn their like lines, and they learn all about each other, and they get their story straight. And the guy's only supposed to be there for 2 nights, but they have this like montage where they're there for what seems like weeks. It just seems like weeks that they're there. And
it
then on
feels
top,
like the whole year.
and then on top of that, the guy, well, first of all, the guy's staying at his house, which I thought was also kind of weird that, these are like really wealthy businessmen. I doubt that the guy would be like, I'm going to stay at your place. Right. I don't think that would be how that works.
This company has no travel expenses at all.
So the other thing I thought was odd was there's like this montage where they're like getting the house festive because he's like, since it's like a bachelor pad, it doesn't have any kind of Christmas decorations. They're all like setting it up for Christmas. And there's a scene where they're like hanging apples from the Christmas tree. Is that a thing? Do people hang apples from a Christmas tree?
Apparently there was a time history where people put live candles on their Christmas tree, so I don't know anything anymore.
I thought that was very strange that they were like grabbing apples and
people
putting
also,
them on
like,
the Christmas tree.
Strangle their Christmas trees with strings of popcorn. I don't know why people put things on their Christmas trees.
Yeah, I mean the popcorn thing I get, but
I don't.
Like full on apples. Like I don't know. It seemed.
And next we will be stuffing roast turkeys inside of our Christmas tree.
I mean the popcorn. Like you can string the popcorn and have that last.
Why not just
through
have
Christmas?
popcorn? Why not just eat popcorn?
You put apples on there, they're going to be rotten after a couple days, right? I mean,
yeah. That's so.
None of it makes sense. So, so he's there for like the 2 days, aka like 5 months, and then he says he's going to extend his visit another 2 weeks. So, of course, they're like, "Oh, hope we got to keep doing this." And well, first she agreed to do it for 2 nights, and it was $3,000. Was it? It was like 3 or 5 grand, and then she agreed to do the full 2 weeks for 10 grand. And of course, you don't hear anything about the dad, but he mysteriously comes back into the picture just to throw a wrench in this whole scheme that they got going on. And apparently the dad is like this grifter who's always talking about getting back on the tour. I'd like to count the number of times he says, "Oh, gotta get back on the tour," which I guess was a golf tour. Did they even ever say what it was? So they just kept saying the tour, but they weren't explaining what he was referring to. He got kicked out of a golf club, so I'm assuming that it was like a golf tour.
Apparently, no. He was that was shorthand news. He's actually that was actually Toreador. He's a renowned bullfighter.
Okay, that makes more sense than most of this movie. They try to set up these like comedic set pieces involving the guy, Senor Del Campo, and them trying to like sneak around and pretend to be a family and stuff. So like the very first night, he's just in the guy's study reading, and they're trying to decide, like, she has her own room, but they have to pretend like they're a couple, obviously, so that she has to go into like his room, and it turns into this huge thing, this like big blowout thing where like she doesn't think that it's proper. Like he says that he can sleep on the couch and she can take the bed, but that's not acceptable. So he has to sleep on the floor in the closet. Like the daughter would even know or care. It's not like they're sleeping in the same bed, but it causes this huge amount of turmoil, and they start arguing and stuff. All of it just felt so dumb. It was just so dumb and lame. The daughter thinks that Del Campo is an angel, and I thought 100% this movie is going to have him. It's going to reveal him to be an angel at the end of this. And they don't explicitly do that.
Doesn't
but
really. The movie doesn't. The movie's not sure whether or not it wants to make him an angel.
I'm pretty sure it, because the very final shot is like him. He's leaving, and then he stops the car, gets out. Somehow he knows that like the girl's looking at him from the window, and then he like tips his hat to her and then gets back in the car and leaves, and that's the end of the movie. I think that they were trying to say like, yeah, he probably is an angel, but
but they didn't have the budget to do any effects or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
the movie just felt very indecisive on whether or not he's an angel. And if he is, that opens up another reading of this movie, whereby a whole lot was whereby a whole lot was simply riding on the actions of other people towards this angel, people who do not know he's an angel. So purposely so, he can guide and help improve the life of this child who basically can't make any major decisions in this movie at all. So if
Right.
he is an angel, he has a very convoluted workflow.
I think that this movie is like all four of the movies, really. Everything has to happen in a very specific way in order for this story to work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just in all of these movies, there's just so many coincidences and things that progress in such a perfect way that everything fits together. And a lot of it feels like really forced, like, oh, all of a sudden the dad comes into the picture again. Like, what are the odds that the dad suddenly shows up and then he extorts Eric McCormick for money, and then all of a sudden he does like a complete 180 and he goes from being a complete a-hole to this guy who says that they should be together at the end, where he's like 100% supportive. And then he has to so he says he's got to leave that night. So he comes, I guess I think it's Christmas Eve. He comes there and he says that he has to go back on the tour or whatever he's doing that night. And then right after he says that he has to leave that night, he leaves immediately. So he doesn't even spend the day with him or anything. He's like, I got to leave tonight, so I should probably go now. And of course that was like a big that caused one of the big moments of conflict in this, where the kid then climbs a tree because she's upset.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big thing is the whole buyout. So
Mm-hmm.
Eric McCormick is this deal that he's trying to close is basically selling the company to Javier, and it would mean that a whole bunch of people lose their jobs because they'd be moving the workforce to Mexico. And Roma Downey's character is one of those people who would lose her job. And so when she finds out, she has this like a big feast for all of the workers and stuff, which I don't know how she was able to make that work. But and then of course, as you might expect, he decides to cancel the deal at the end because over the course of maybe 2 weeks at most, he completely changes his entire personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the people in these movies that we're going to discuss.
So
complete 180.
Then we have a narrative about how they have to avoid having this company outsource their jobs to Mexico, and then in the last scene, the millionaire who has become good now, literally when the girl climbs up on the tree, falls off the branch, he has to catch her, so she's literally saved by a millionaire. I think this movie is very Republican in a way. The millionaires are gonna save us,
and they're gonna do the right thing in the end. Everything about this is completely boring, bland, milk toast. Like everything about this movie is just, everything is completely telegraphed from the moment that it starts. You know exactly how everything is going to play out.
And at the same time, it's impossible to track from moment to moment. Like I kid, of course, about trying to give this movie a political reading because it's simply not cohesive enough to have a political reading, even if it actually wanted to have one.
It's just a boring collection of holiday tropes. That's all it is.
That in tandem really don't form a story because they're very hard to follow because you don't even have a sense of time passing. Like there's a whole lot given to like the amount of time that there's left until the next event happens, but you never have a feeling. You just have to wait for someone to tell you, oh, guess it's time to do this thing now.
It's all pretty bad, but you take one look at that cover and you know exactly what's going to happen in this movie. Mm-hmm. Except for some reason that Hector Elizondo looks completely ridiculous. He doesn't. What he's
Everybody,
wearing.
Please look up the DVD cover. It's on the IMDb for this movie.
What he's wearing in this, I don't think he wears a single time in the movie. He's wearing a suit throughout the whole movie.
It's photoshopped into the corner, which makes me think that was just like a. I think you said like they literally just pasted in his headshot.
Yeah, it was from like the photo shoot while he's getting new headshots, and he just took one of those photos
Mhm.
and copied it in. That's exactly what it
You
looks
have to
like.
put it on the promotional material for Borrowed Hearts. This is not a good movie, but it's not one of the fun, not good movies.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so nothing. It's so it didn't even make me laugh at how bad it was. I mean, some of the scenes. I mean, there were a lot of like kind of WTF moments where I'm just like, what is going on in this movie? But it wasn't anything that has any kind of lasting power. Like this is a movie that I saw yesterday, and it's already fading rapidly from my mind.
Mhm.
I played that because I think almost everyone knows what
Oh, yeah.
commercial that is, even though there's no
Even though you can't see it.
yeah, you can't see it, but you know what it is. That
Birds.
commercial still plays to this
Oh,
day.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Our third feature this month stars Mark Ruffalo as a department store security guard who is tasked with watching over a mother-daughter pickpocket duo until after Christmas. But guess what? Mark Ruffalo and the mother fall in love, and it's all very lovely and Christmassy. And anyway, airing on Lifetime on December 8th, 1997. This is on the second day of Christmas.
A Lifetime original movie. She's just trying to make a living.
Female suspect with a red-coated handbag.
To him, it's strictly business.
Patent taxi, huh? That's cute.
Will their Christmas be naughty or nice?
Christmas is supposed to be a time of compassion. Don't you feel the least bit sorry for us?
Mary Stuart Masterson, Mark Ruffalo.
Don't let this one get away.
A gift-wrapped romance, only from Lifetime.
Well, everybody deserves a second chance.
On the second day of Christmas. Premieres next month on Lifetime Television for Women.
Trish and her 6-year-old niece, Patsy, make their living picking pockets, but when they try to take advantage of holiday shoppers with fat wallets, they run into a little snag. A department store security guard named Bert catches them in the act. The store owner wants them arrested, but decides to wait until Christmas is over. To ensure they don't make a run for it, he entrusts their care to Bert. With jail on the horizon, Trish and Patsy are scared for their future. But as the holiday nears its end, it looks as though a budding romance might just save them after all. Wow, this movie.
What an insane logline.
This movie is top to bottom, completely out of control. Before I get your initial thoughts, Ken, I want to first discuss the poster for this movie.
Oh.
If you look on IMDb and look at the poster for On the Second Day of Christmas, it features a Santa Claus who is shushing. He's got his like little finger up and he's shushing. Next to the Santa Claus is a puppy wearing a Santa hat.
Mark Ruffalo and Mary Stuart Masterson are nowhere to be found. They are not present here.
The puppy featured on the cover, to my knowledge, does not exist.
No, it's not in the movie at all.
In this movie, there's like what appears to be a young child in pajamas looking at a fully lit Christmas tree in the background.
Which is very clearly a stock photo.
Yeah. Who is that child? What is going on there? The Santa that is featured is not a Santa that is in the movie either. What's going on here? Bonus 10 holiday songs. So what does that mean? Does it also include a CD, or is it like a DVD ROM thing that you have to listen to the songs on your computer or DVD player?
You're buying a DVD of On the Second Day of Christmas. You want something.
What is going on here? I mean, this cover, I think, completely sums up what this movie is, which is
bananas.
Who knows what's happening here? This is completely out of control.
That's the worst DVD cover I've ever seen.
It literally has nothing to do. I mean, you wouldn't even know that this is the same movie, except that it has the two stars listed at the top, and
So you assume that it's the same thing.
and at the bottom you see Santa flying over New York City, what appears to be New York City,
I guess.
and
I would assume that's where it's set.
why is
assume-
yeah, New York City. We'll get into that, but why is Santa? I mean, it makes you think that Santa is somehow involved in this movie, and then you have the Christmas lights, the tagline: "Anyone can have a change of heart when it comes to Christmas." What does that mean? Come on.
That's something that vaguely corresponds to something that happens that's vaguely about what the movie is. Like, people can change, but it's not really structured around Christmas. The whole point is that people can change in a more permanent way.
Of course.
Well, certain characters can.
So
Other
okay.
people are just miserable in this.
Yeah. What were your initial thoughts on the second day of Christmas?
One, it's such an insane idea. Like, we can't arrest these people until after Christmas, so we're going to send this single mother and her child to live with this random security guard.
Yes, the whole
That is
basis
so
of this
upsetting.
movie. The whole basis of this movie is completely bonkers and makes no sense. It shouldn't exist. Whoever
No.
thought that this is a movie that should exist should have been, I don't know.
This has the same
canonized or
understanding of
something.
the world as like a particularly badly written like Wattpad story or something.
It's
Like,
just,
that's how this works, right?
I mean, just to hammer this down, just to reiterate this, you have Mark Ruffalo as a security guard. You have Mary Stuart Masterson and her niece as these pickpockets who get caught at a department store in New York, and they send her and her young niece home with the security guard.
That is so
What?
upsetting.
Are you kidding me?
That is not okay.
In custody, like handcuffed, and like what? I'm at a loss for words with this movie. Complete loss for words. So apparently this takes place in New York. They make it very clear that it's New York. This was not shot in New York. This was shot in Toronto.
As
Nothing-
most TV movies that make a point to say they're set in New York are.
Nothing about this looks like New York in any way.
It does not even make a vague effort to look like New York.
It's the least New York movie I've ever seen. Maybe like you have like they do things that sort of try to make you immediately believe that it's New York. Like, you have this guy out in front of the department store who's like yelling for a taxi, but I mean, anybody who's been to New York knows that that's not even a thing that happens, where you just have like a businessman standing on the street like yelling like taxi. Like, that's not something that happens. Second, you have a situation where, so Mary Stuart Masterson as Trish and her niece Patsy, played by Lauren Pratt, they scam some people outside to get some money or whatever, and you have these cops who stop them, and they're like separated, so the cops think that the girl Patsy is on her own, and they're like, "Oh, go home." Sorry, no cop would ever just tell a kid in the middle of Manhattan to just go home by herself.
Go home.
This kid is like 8 years old. That would not happen. Sorry. You wouldn't just leave a child alone on a crowded street in New York like that. Oh my God.
Apparently 1990s, apparently Giuliani's New York was just different.
You have the setup there. And of course, like, they don't want to go with him. He doesn't particularly want them to he doesn't want to do this either, but the boss was telling him that he's got to do it for some reason. Again, completely baffling as to why this is happening. And after this, you start to see these title cards show up every few minutes with absolutely ridiculous titles that,
like, 3-word, like, it's like the titles in like a Godard movie or something.
These happen very frequently, but they're inconsistent too. Like, they happen at really inconsistent times. So sometimes it'll happen like 2 minutes after the other one, like very quickly. And
it's basically like something you would. It's basically like and over like a screen print, like a painting, it feels like a scene change or something.
Yeah, I thought at first maybe that was in between commercial breaks, but then it happens like 8 times or something, and it seems like it happens way too frequently to be during commercial break.
I think for a 2-hour program, there would probably be somewhere around 8 commercial breaks, so that might be it. It's just that the commercials were placed in really weird places. The one that I took a screenshot of when I sent it to you was one of like carolers, and the title is "Worst Things Could Happen." And if you're wondering if they have anything to do with the segment that's preceding or following it, the answer is no.
They have nothing to do with it. A lot of the titles are taken from lines of dialogue, like we were robbed by Santa or whatever when that happens.
Which doesn't mean they have anything to do with the
Yeah.
movie.
So of course, so they go back to well, first they have to go to their apartment to get some clothes and stuff like that, and then they end up going back to Mark Ruffalo's place, and they go to a supermarket, which again I don't think that would exist in Manhattan, and then they fall in love, and
Well, yeah.
so then you have there's this other subplot going on with Mel, who I guess is Trish's ex-boyfriend. He's a kind of a thief and a scam artist as well, and he ends up robbing them and robs Trish's burgles her apartment, takes all her stuff, and he's dressed as Santa for some reason, and then
he's the guy on the DVD cover.
And then at one point he takes the child, like he grabs Patsy and puts her in a van. I don't know what his game was there, like what his plan was. Why would he take the child?
That becomes who knows why.
So then on Christmas Day, they're starting to get along now. The two of them, they're starting to hit it off. There's a spark there. There's a noticeable spark.
Well, yeah, but because of the circumstances, it more just feels like Stockholm syndrome than anything else.
Yeah. So
this is a movie about an abduction.
Yeah, it is. It really is. They're starting to fall for each other, and Bert is like, "Oh, I got to go visit my family in Maplewood, which is in New Jersey," and they go to Maplewood and meet with his family, and they love his family, blah blah blah, and then turns out there's this place called Santa's Castle in Maplewood, which I looked it up. It doesn't actually exist.
I can't imagine that a movie that tried to pass off the least New York parts of Toronto as the heart of Manhattan would also invent a place in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Yeah, Maplewood, New Jersey does exist, but Santa's Castle does not exist. There is something called Santa's Castle, but it's not what is represented in that movie, and it's not located in New Jersey.
I don't think we need to belabor the point there. Whatever, that's fine. Also, pause. I'm on the Wikipedia page for Maplewood, New Jersey, as all the cool kids are. The 2000 and 2010 census reflect a very stable population change of a decline of one person. 23,868 in 2000, 23,867 in 2010. Now, I know obviously that's different people. Like, it was just a change in population that resulted in the difference being about a net loss of one. I like to think it's just one person that just got fed up with Maplewood. Like, everyone else stayed. One person just got fed up with Maplewood. It's like,
I'm out of here.
This town's not big enough for the whole 23,868 of us. I'm out of here.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, so when they go to, one thing that bothered me when they go to Santa's Castle, first of all, it's like super late. Like, I don't know why they would wait until it was like very late at night to go there to begin with, but at any rate, they decide to go. One thing that really bothered me about that scene was they show them getting in the car, and Trish gets in the car on the driver's side, and like why would you get in the car on the driver's side if you're not driving? I think it was only done just because they had to get her like getting into the car, and they couldn't reframe it so they were just like, just get on the driver's side. It's fine.
Well, that one scene was actually shot in Britain, so maybe that's the thing. They drive on the other side of the road there, so.
Perhaps. I mean, he gets in too, so she had to scooch. So at any rate, they go to Santa's castle. It's closed, of course, but then you have this. I guess he's a groundskeeper or a security guard. He's somebody, some kind of maybe a man. He looks more like a maintenance person more than anything. And he shows up and says that they're closed, but then he lets them in anyway because this is a family movie, and of course that is what happens. And even though the place is closed, it's all like completely lit up and decorated, like as if they're still open. Like there's hot cocoa on the still on the table and like cookies and stuff. And Patsy writes a letter to Santa because she wanted a bike for Christmas, and the bike was stolen, of course, when her house got robbed. And perhaps the strangest thing in this movie is that the guy who's like the security guard shows up the next day when they have to go back to the department store and get arrested. He shows up as their lawyer and has like filled out forms and things that end up getting them off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's where this where the Christmas magic comes into play here. Now, by this point, Mark Ruffalo and Mary Stuart Masterson say they love each other. So Trish and Bert, they're in love. They profess their love for one another on the escalator in the department store. And
where else would you do that?
Funnily enough, the mom, Mark Ruffalo's mom, is also there for some reason. She's doing some day after Christmas shopping or something, and
well, that's when you return stuff.
Almost gets pickpocketed by Patsy because, of course, Mel kidnaps her and tries to force her into pickpocketing people.
There's so much kidnapping in this movie.
Yeah. And then also, by the way, there's an entire scene right before this. There was an entire scene of Mark Ruffalo jamming out with a guy playing the clarinet on a bus. And there was like no reason for it to exist. He's just scatting it up with a guy playing a clarinet on the bus.
Just a lot of New York disappearances. And was this the original pilot for Without a Trace? I had to check to see if I was correctly remembering that Without a Trace is set in New York, so I had to look that up. The research that I do for my jokes on the show. So remember Without a Trace?
I sort of remember it.
That was a show.
Yeah,
done for a long time.
So you got the security guard. His name's David Elfman, by the way. He comes in and he gets them off the hook, and then they decide to. They also happen to apprehend Mel at the same time. And oh, guess what? Mark Ruffalo's brother is there too because he's a cop and he happens to be working at the department store as well. And then you have the mom steal the like manager's wallet and plant it in Mel's Santa suit, so he gets arrested, and the pickpocketing is, I guess, pinned on him. So they get off the hook, and then after this, he proposes. Bert proposes to Trish, and she says yes. And then we jump forward to New Year's.
Happy New Year, everybody.
And you have this really brutal, absolutely brutal song with Mark Ruffalo singing and playing piano because he made a song about Trish. And he's singing a song about Trish. And it's just, oh my God. This one might be the most insane out of all of them.
It honestly is, because you think it's going to be the one about the mannequin coming to life, but it's really not. This one just has the highest propensity of just completely bananas misunderstandings of just human behavior.
It is It's wild. I mean, it's just like one thing after another, and it's just so utterly ridiculous. You can watch this on YouTube, by the way,
And you
and
should.
you should, but it is 2 hours long. So
It's
at least
not.
according to IMDb, it's 2 hours long.
That's with commercials. It's like an hour 30.
Is it? Okay.
You can knock it out in 90 minutes.
It felt like
Really worth it.
it felt like this was like 10 weeks long. This movie, it's very rough. Now, I will say that like Mary Stuart Masterson and Mark Ruffalo, they do a pretty good job in this, but the thing is, like, the material they're working with is just so over the top that you can't take anything in this seriously at all. I mean, especially like when he proposes to her, when they say they love each other. You have to remember, they've spent like maybe one collective day together, and they're saying they love each other and they want to get married. Like, this isn't going to work.
So yeah, this really does feel like a movie written by like a kid or something. Like, no understanding of what would happen, of that the remedy to the initial problem presented in the premise of the film is not you're going to go live with this random security guard, and that this is absolutely not how humans fall in love with each other.
It's so insane. Oh my god, this movie.
Yeah, I just couldn't get over how this really kind of feels like if not kidnappings, this definitely feels like a very upsetting understanding of like people being under the control of other people.
She also convinces him to break into a Christmas tree place and steal a Christmas tree.
This is basically a movie about a crime wave.
Which completely goes against like all of his principles. Like he's this really by the book guy following the law.
Like a family that's all police officers that give him a hard time because he has like he had like a problem. He has like in this why couldn't he be a cop? There was some reason I can't remember now.
He couldn't. I think he couldn't pass the marksmanship test or something.
Okay. So yeah, this is the guy who's very by the book, who very disappointed, and it feels like he let his family down by not also being a cop like them. So he's going to be like the best department store security guard he can be, and then that just all goes out the window immediately.
I'm noticing a lot of the guys, a lot of the male characters in these movies have been complete doofuses. Like pretty much all the movies that we talk about have male characters that are either douchebags or doofuses. I was just reminded, I know this is a completely off topic and going back to another movie that we talked about, but in the A Mom for Christmas, after their living room burns down, there's a scene where the dad is just like, he's like curled up on the burnt floor in the living room, practically in the fetal position. And Olivia Newton-John walks in and goes, she walks in and goes, "Are you sure you don't want some gazpacho?" And he just goes, "No." I just remember the gazpacho scene.
Like, that really felt like that's like a Room or Troll 2 quality line reading there too.
Yeah. It's like he's in this completely burned out living room. Everything, like all of his like prized sentimental possessions, like photos of his dead wife, they're all gone. He's like rocking back and forth, just completely broken, a shell of a man. And she comes in. Are you sure you don't want some gazpacho? Oh my god. It's incredible. All right. Our final film this month concerns a grumpy book editor who wants nothing to do with the holiday spirit, but becomes haunted by the manifestation of her inner child. And guess what? She also falls in love.
These movies are so regressive.
Yeah. Airing on December 6th, 1999, again on Lifetime, this is If You Believe.
Alice.
I'm not Alice.
Don't play games. Where's your father? Bob! Bob, are you here? What are you doing here?
I'm not going through another Christmas without celebrating.
What are you talking about, Alice?
I told you. I'm not Alice.
Hello.
When are you gonna pull this place together? It's been over a year since you divorced Peter and moved in.
I can't believe he left you here.
Hello?
Is your father home?
Snappy. This.
Aunt Susan, who's this?
Alice.
Bah humbug. Susan Stone is definitely what you'd call a modern-day Scrooge. She's a young... Well, then she's not a Scrooge if she's young. The whole thing about Scrooge is that he's old and that he makes regret. Who wrote this logline? Jaded book editor who is consumed with self-doubt. I mean, aren't we all? And has lost the passion and drive that defined her childhood persona. On the verge of losing her job and being completely on the outs with her family, Susan has nearly given up on happiness. I mean, 2019 mood there.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere, a cheerful, carefree 7-year-old girl named Susie awaits Susan back at her apartment. It turns out that little Susie is the embodiment of Susan's inner child. She's Susan, as she once was years ago. Susie has come to help the adult Susan rediscover and recapture the love of life that she's lost. It just occurred to me in a few weeks, my overused go-to joke, a 2019 mood. I'm going to have to update the year on that one.
You are.
2020 mood. Anyway, is that just the whole... Is that the logline they used? That's so long.
Yeah, I just copied and pasted that.
I know. I assumed so. Man, wow. That's a lot of words about a movie that's not really about anything.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty much, that log line just pretty much, that's the whole movie right there.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
She's having a difficult time, ruined all of her relationships with her family because she's not happy. And so somehow a version of her childhood self that's somehow been beamed over from some sort of parallel, but not entirely parallel timeline has appeared in here to tell her how to, I don't know, have fun again. Really loses the thread kind of quickly. Adam, what did you think of this?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll say about this one, I think it might be the worst edited of all of them.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but there are multiple times when lines of dialogue are ADR'd in, but the camera is still focused on the person. So they're literally sitting there. Their mouth isn't moving, and yet they're talking. Like, it's not from behind them. It's straight on, and they're saying things, and yet their mouth is very plainly in focus, and and it's not moving. I don't know how they even, how did no one see that? And that is completely baffling. And it happens multiple times. It's not just one. There were at least 2 cases that I saw where there was egregious errors in editing in this.
Well, there's a lot of egregious errors in this movie.
Sure. So you have Ali Walker starring as Susan Stone, and then
who is about as good as anyone could be with this material.
Oh, I love how the beginning of the movie, she's 20, and I just immediately go, no, that's not gonna work.
I like how there's this one point where they have basically the same child actress playing her at way different ages, and then they just throw her in at 20, even though she was, she's playing a 37-year-old character. She was about 37 when they made this, and they just switch. They just maybe have 2 actors to play the character.
I thought that they were going to leave her. I thought they were going to leave her at 20. I'm like, what? That's not going to work.
Because there's this whole montage at the start where it's about how Allie has gone from this happy child to someone who's being completely bogged down by her unpleasant family and the world around her, to the point where she's become this sort of cynical person that she becomes at the start of the story proper. There's so many rotations of that. I didn't know how many there were, because every time it's just they cut back, there's another Christmas or another holiday or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes is it Thanksgiving? It's a mixture of Christmases and Thanksgivings, and she's a different age. And for a while I thought that was going to be most of the movie. would be just like different information transmitted through different holidays, and I thought that would actually be kind of a daring approach for this movie.
Yeah,
But
well,
nope.
they definitely didn't do that. Basically, this is a Christmas Carol ripoff
Sort of. It's
in a lot
like
in a
it's
lot
like
of
a Christmas
ways.
Carol from ripoff from someone who didn't really read it.
They watched 10 minutes of Mickey's Christmas Carol and then
You know,
just
like, I think I
filled
know
in the
what this is
blanks.
about.
Uh,
They got the part where there's a bitter person who's visited by spirits.
yeah. So you have Hayden Panettiere as Susie, and she also plays her niece Alice, and that's why in the clip she thinks that it's her niece Alice who's visiting her. And yeah, so Susan is this bitter book editor. It's funny because she's a workaholic, right? But she doesn't actually do any work. So a large part of the movie is like her going into the office. And I love the scene when she calls her assistant to come in on like I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas in that
I think it
scene.
was like the day after Thanksgiving or something,
Yeah,
but like that
yeah.
morning.
She calls her to come into work and she's just playing solitaire. It's like, man, she's like
There's so much
she's
important work to do right now.
she's just like straight up evil, this woman. And it's never really clear. It's never really defined why she's so mean and bitter. They talk about the fact that that when her father died, it was hard on her, but I still feel like it wasn't quite justified that she was such a terrible person. And I also get like, yeah, her job is maybe stressing her out, but also it seems like she is a workaholic who doesn't do any work. So I feel like she's probably bringing a lot of that onto herself.
Yeah, like the movie does not understand how to in what way she is stressed out about her job, because in some scenes it's about how she's always working and working and working, and other scenes it's about how apparently she's about to get fired because she's falling behind all of her colleagues.
So what happens that brings Susie about is that she gets bonked on the head. She's leaving work and I guess it's ice, or maybe she just falls
I mean,
just
sometimes I just
walking.
fall.
I mean, my wife just randomly falls a lot. Yeah, she just falls and bonks her head, and that's when Susie shows up. So I think it has something to do with that. Although I was expecting there to be more of like a Christmas Carol thing where at the end it like reverts back to that, but that's not really.
Well, as we've established, this was written by someone who only watched the first 10 minutes of a
Yeah.
Christmas Carol
Yeah.
adaptation.
They saw the first ghost and they were just like, oh, I guess this is reality.
I think that, yeah.
This is just how it's going to be moving forward. So
And
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, by the end, I mean, basically it ends with everything turning out great for her and all of her bridges being mended with no effort at all.
Yeah, plus she falls in love. So
Yeah.
that
She's an editor and she falls in love with like a writer who's like working with it, which seems unethical. I don't know. At the very least, he's gonna have to like he's gonna have to like change publishers or something.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out for her. So
because I mean, she says like she can't because she doesn't want to gavel that sort of quandary with someone that she's supposed to be working with, and then eventually the movie is like, who cares?
I mean, the big thing with this is that Susie is supposed to be giving her making her remember how happy and positive she was as a child and giving her that Christmas spirit back. But I have to wonder how much of an impact Susie really had on her. I mean, the whole bringing on this Tom Weller guy as a writer or bringing him into the publishing his book. I'm not sure that guy would have showed up anyway, right? Whether Susie was there or not.
Maybe it's just about whether or not she felt motivated enough to like work with him.
Yeah, maybe that was part of it where Susie was sort of influencing her. It never seemed like she was making that big of an impact on her decisions. It seemed like she was sort of going to make those decisions anyway, but I don't know. She was really reluctant at first, of course. She thought she was going crazy, and this is a movie that takes place in New York also, and there's like when she first is walking down the street with Susie and talking to her, people are like giving her the stink eye and stuff, which is again something that would never happen in New York.
No.
we mind our own business in New York, okay? If I stopped and looked at every single person walking down the street talking to themselves, I would have wasted half my day.
Yeah, I don't live in New York, but just on a personal level, I decided a long time ago that I should just not pay attention to people like talking to themselves or whatever, because it's just not it's not worth my time to worry.
So I guess Susie helps her, become a better person. And over the course of like, I don't know, 3 days, she again makes a complete 180 and she's a completely different person and everybody loves her again. And she falls in love and Tom loves her. After like 2 days, so she goes to Connecticut. I think it's Connecticut, right?
It's Connecticut.
Yeah.
It's a great, and after the ice storm last month, this is another entry in the Connecticut discussion series.
Yeah. So
Films involving Connecticut.
She goes to this little town in Connecticut where he lives and goes through their Christmas traditions and falls in love with him, and that's it. Yeah. Although I do love that when I guess it was after Susie left and like she starts crying. Susan starts crying and she goes, "Merry Christmas, my Suze. I love you so much." And she's like bawling her eyes out. And it's like, but it's you. You're saying you love yourself so much. I mean, maybe that's part of the whole healing process.
It's a lot of self-actualization.
We mentioned about the like her alienating herself from her family and friends and all of that, but it gets to the point where so she goes over to her brother's house for Thanksgiving, and during that meal she tells her niece that Santa isn't real. and
it's very insistent about doing it.
Yeah. She's
like her brother gives her like 5 chances to like get off that train, but she's taking it all the way to the station.
Yeah. So she completely ruins her niece's life, and then and then her brother's like, "Look, you're a bad person. I don't like you, and I want you out of my life." And he kicks her out and says that he never wants to speak to her again.
Again, a thing that's resolved relatively abruptly by the end.
Oh yeah. It took like one phone call, if I remember correctly, and it was everything's back on track.
By the end of the scene, they're all just together again, and I guess they've, I don't know, waved a wand and made the and made the poor child forget that her aunt just came in there and shattered her whole conception of holiday happiness.
Yeah, it's it's pretty bad. Everything about this is it's all very bad. Hayden Panettiere, this is, I don't know if it's her first role, but it's certainly, no, it's not her first role, but it's an early role for her, and she's pretty bad in it.
I mean, it's such a confusing part for a child actor, I would presume, because there's nothing to like connect with, because there's just so much changing in every scene. Like, that's just a weirdly written role.
Yeah, she's an annoying little psycho in this, and I didn't.
Every child in most of these movies is very irritating. Like, this is definitely written by someone who does not understand how to write any human, but especially not children.
Yeah, she's really abrasive.
Like, this is not the fault of anyone. This is not the fault of the many child performers in all of these movies. But wow, this is like a whole plethora of really horribly written child characters.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like, because she signs Tom up with her publishing company that she works for, she's like once again the all-star at work, and she's suddenly nice to everyone at work, including her assistant. I guess it's her assistant that she ends up giving credit to because she was the one who found Tom in the first place. And that's it. It's
Yeah.
pretty boring overall. It's laughably bad, I would say.
But it's not just bizarre and enjoyably bizarre enough to be something on the second day of Christmas, which again is weird because on the second day of Christmas is on some level basically the only movie that does not attempt to invoke a fantasy world in any way. And yet the movies that actually are fantasies are so much more boring than that one.
Yeah. I would say in order of how ridiculous these movies were, for me, Second Day of Christmas, Mom for Christmas, If You Believe, then Borrowed Hearts.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
I would also attribute that ranking to memorability.
Mm-hmm. I will never forget, at least for a while, the complete just, this is set in a reality where no human laws or customs that I recognize exist of a second day for Christmas on the second day of Christmas. That's going to stay there and haunt me for a while.
Yeah, I mean, all of these are just so they're so bad, but it's also interesting to watch these movies in succession because they all have so many similarities. Like it's crazy. And when we were going through all of the ones, like all of the Christmas TV movies that were released throughout the 90s, there's so many of them. And I'd be willing to bet that almost all of them have the same themes and the same sort of plot beats.
Yeah. The great thing when we discuss TV movies on the show is that they're often just so much more, they can be either far more dull than a theatrical film or just entirely more unhinged. So you really never know what you're going to get.
Any closing thoughts about the 4 movies that we discussed this month?
Probably, but I don't know. But they're just all wordless reactions that I had while I was watching them, and that I haven't been able to put into to verbalize yet.
I would say if you're looking for something different, something that you haven't seen a bunch of times this holiday season, maybe give a couple of these a look if you're looking for a laugh. If you're getting together for some friends, you're having your ugly sweater party or whatever, just put one of these on in the background. You'll have a blast with pretty much all of them except Borrowed Hearts. Borrowed Hearts is just bland and it's bad, and it's still fun to watch because of just how bad it is.
But it doesn't approach like On the Second Day of Christmas or even A Mom for Christmas in terms of just moments that are just completely baffling.
Yeah. All of these are available for free to watch, by the way. So they're on. So I already mentioned that A Mom for Christmas is on YouTube. Borrowed Hearts is also on YouTube, and then The Second Day of Christmas is also on YouTube. So 3 of the 4 on YouTube. If You Believe is on Tubi. So
Tubi is really an important part of the show at this point.
Yeah, just on a whim, after watching one of these, I just sort of scrolled through the other offerings that Tubi has.
Oh, I do that every time we have something to watch here on Tubi.
Yeah, I think Tubi is going to be a very integral part of this podcast because it has so many of these types of movies.
It's going to come down to Tubi and Crackle.
Tubi and Crackle, yep.
And that's why this podcast crackles.
Oh my goodness. All right. I think that's going to do it for this month. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much for joining us. You can send your questions and topic suggestions to 90s@filmpulse.net. And you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at 90spod for daily 90s fun. Until next month.
Next decade.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's intense.
Last show of the decade. Forget last show of the year, last show of the decade.
I just now realized that. That is crazy.
It's almost the 20s.
But for us, it's always the 90s.
Yeah.
For Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson. This has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.